give him a Super Bowl ring? He's like, sure. She's like, I do anything for you. I even killed myself. And he was like, whoa.
Right.
What's this chick's problem? So right there, I was hooked. And then, I kept watching with a close eye because I wanted to see how far this show will push the envelope compared to the other show in the past. And then I seen, they made a reference to a team in Jacksonville. He said, I ain't going to the Jags. That's when careers die.
Right. I also remember the Steve Largent line that one of the characters made about like you're about X amount of yards away from Steve Largent, and his response was, who the explicit was that? Who is Steve Largent? Like, wow.
And his girlfriend, he was like, this is why you need to play special teams. And the Rock character was like, who is Steve Largent? Oh, he's only in the Hall of Fame. Right.
And I mean, it's been an amazing show so far. I mean, as I said before, they have been cleared for up to 8 episodes. And how long do you believe it'll last until the NFL says, you know what, we're either going to roll with this or we're not going to roll with this? Somebody got to get an NFL licensing deal on the table.
Well, I'm thinking like this, and I didn't even think about this until we actually got on air. I'm thinking the NFL lets it go a little longer because it only deals with a certain aspect of the player. It more so deals with the mismanagement of money. It doesn't really go into the teams as much because the previous show Playmakers, as I went back and caught a couple episodes, that dealt with a lot of actual team issues and backdrops of teams like shooting drugs up in the players or just having contracts. Not to sound racist, but this show may last longer because the show really is about a bunch of young black athletes blowing their money.
Right.
In so many ways. And I don't see the NFL pulling back because another one of my favorite shows is The League, which is filmed there in Chicago. And they do some crazy stuff over there, and they have actual football players. The show is not based around football itself; it's based on fantasy. But they have actually licensed players and memorabilia on that show. And that show is its 6th season now. So maybe the NFL has eased up a little bit because it really focuses on more of the player aspect and the management versus the Packers cutting the guy because he did something or just don't like him. But it still pushes that question that it is edgy because it puts a perception of how these players are. Like that scene of him going in the bathroom with baby girl. Like we can rewind back to 2007. Then Roethlisberger was charged with that same thing.
Right. This is For the Love of Sports. I'm Brian Lovelace on the line with One Take Podcast Nation's Brandon Davenport. Before we get out of here, man, I want to know, would you recommend this show and why?
I mean, of course I recommend. You're a football guy. You want to see this. You want to see what it's about. You got The Rock, a big guy, big superstar. He takes a shot at television finally. And it's an HBO show. HBO usually don't give us bad shows. I mean, they've given us through the years Game of Thrones, The Wire, Oz, Sopranos, Sex and the City, True Blood. They usually give good shows. Like even the new show they have out now, True Detective. I mean, I think if you're a football fan, it gives you a great aspect on some of these players' lives and the understanding of what some of these players go through and some of these former players go through. Because it does have a little touch on the whole head trauma issue too. So, I mean, I think it's a great show to watch. It's only 30 minutes, so it don't take up that much of your time. I mean, it holds you over to your regular Sunday programs come on, Walking Dead or things like that. So if you're a football fan, it's a must-watch show, man.
Yeah, it definitely surprised me with the 30-minute time block, but we'll see. I mean, The Rock is one of my favorites. Me being a wrestling fan, I'm always drawn to what The Rock does on television or in movies. So we'll see the longevity of HBO's new sports drama Ballers. Thanks, Brandon. You give them a shout out your Twitter, man, and what you got going on.
Oh, y'all know what it is. It's your boy B-Dab. Listen to 1024 on the Twitter. Brandon Davenport on the Facebook. You can always check out all my shows on OneTakePodcast.com. That's OneTakePodcast.com. All one word. You should know that by now if you've been around the internet. Thank you for having me on, brother.
No problem, man. That was my homeboy, Brandon M. Davenport from One Take Podcast Nation. You can give him a follow at Mr. Dav, DAV1024 on Twitter, or follow him on Facebook at Brandon M. Davenport. This is For the Love of Sports on ChicagolandSportsRadio.com. For the Love of Sports, ChicagolandSportsRadio.com. I'm Brian Loveless, and really quick, I'm going to give you the all quarterback lineups from quarterback, running backs, receivers, offensive linemen, tight ends from my page, from my fans and followers on For the Love of Sports fan page on Facebook. First, my list goes as follows. Brady at quarterback, Tim Tebow at running back, Rodgers, Flacco, Roethlisberger, Tannehill, Cam Newton, all offensive linemen. My wide receivers were Colin Kaepernick and E.J. Manuel, surprisingly, and Andrew Luck. A former co-host of mine, Kerry Brins' lineup went Peyton Manning, Johnny Manziel, Cam Newton, and Colin Kaepernick at receiver. Tight end, Andrew Luck, Big Ben, Stafford, Brady, Flacco at offense, and Dalton at offensive lineman. Chuck Harris from Chuck and Prez on ChicagolandSportsRadio.com also had his savior, Aaron Rodgers, Green Bay Packer fan. Aaron Rodgers at quarterback, Russell Wilson at running back, Tannehill and Colin Kaepernick at wide receiver, Cam Newton at tight end, Big Ben, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Andrew Luck, and Tony Romo as his offensive line group. Those have been some outrageous lineups, and I know a couple of my friends and followers have fun doing it. Always check back on our Facebook page at For the Love of Sports and see what we got coming up for next week's show. Up next is my interview with Badger Blitz senior writer John Veldehuis on the Wisconsin Badgers football program as a part of my Big Ten preview, only on ChicagolandSportsRadio.com. For the Love of Sports. Welcome back to For the Love of Sports, and I'm Brian Loveless, and I'm back, and as a part of my Big Ten football preview, we start off with the Wisconsin Badgers. We have on the line senior writer for BadgerBlitz.com on the Rivals Network, John Veldehuis. Go ahead and give John a follow on Twitter at John Veldehuis. That's JOHNVELDHUIS. If you want to talk some Badger football. John, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great, and let's get down to this preview and let's talk some Badgers. First off, I want to talk the head coaching change. Former Pitt head coach Paul Chryst is now leading the reins at Wisconsin. What are some differences you are seeing from him and how the former Gary Anderson ran things so far in camp?
I guess from a personal standpoint, he runs practices for a lot longer than Gary Anderson did. So that takes the wait to get to interview people takes a little bit longer. Gary Anderson was always talking about getting guys in and out, but Paul, I think, really likes to let practices run a little bit longer, to try and build up endurance and really stress the fundamentals, and in a way that I think he and the coaching staff is hoping will kind of pay off in the long run once they get to the actual football season. But really, for the most part, there's not a whole lot different from a schematic standpoint as far as offensive and defensive football. Defensively, that's because they retained Dave Aranda, who was the defensive coordinator under Gary Anderson for both of his years at Wisconsin, and then offensively, it's really the Badgers are just going to stick with the kind of tried and true offensive philosophy that has been kind of their bread and butter over the last couple of years or so, and in part because Paul Chryst was a big part of making sure that the foundation was in place for the offense to be successful. Gary Anderson, for the most part, they stayed true to power football, play action passing, that type of thing. But in the long term, based on how he was recruiting, you could tell that it was looking like they were going to incorporate more elements of the spread offense and things like that. But with Paul Chryst, it's basic Badger offense: run the ball, play action passing, developing good offensive linemen. So really, the product on the field that you're going to see with Paul Chryst Badgers is really not I think, going to look a whole lot different than what you saw under Gary Anderson or Brett Bielema, in part because Paul Chryst was around when Brett Bielema was the head coach, and as far as Gary Anderson's concerned, it's going to look pretty similar because Anderson wasn't around long enough to really change the kind of the DNA of the program.
All right, let's get into that running game that Wisconsin is so well known for. Nation's leading rusher last year, Melvin Gordon, is gone to the NFL, of course. Corey Clement steps in as his successor, and who was in a backup role, rushed for over 900 yards of his own. Is he the next one in line for as far as Wisconsin's great history of running backs?
It certainly looks that way. Corey and Melvin are different guys, but they were very competitive when they were on campus together. And we've seen Corey have some big games. I mean, like he broke out in kind of a big way against Rutgers, playing back in his home state of New Jersey for the first time. And so, we've seen the flashes from him of a guy who would be able to carry a big burden for the offense and make some plays down the field. He's not quite as fast and he's not quite as explosive as Melvin was, particularly during his last season with the Badgers. But I think Corey is, at least, from if you compare when they're stepping into being the guy on campus, Corey is probably more well-rounded than Gordon was. Gordon, you could tell was this athletic monster, but I think Corey is going to be more like a more valuable asset in the passing game earlier than Gordon was. And I think Corey is built to run in between the tackles maybe a little bit better than Gordon did when he kind of became the guy at Wisconsin. So I don't think you're going to see Clement match the numbers that Melvin put up, especially during his last year. But don't be surprised if they don't fall, all too far away, because Clement is really talented. He was a very highly rated recruit coming out of high school, and he's contributed, basically since he got onto campus. He impressed the coaching staff, right away as soon as he started working with them in his first fall camp, and kind of worked his way into the rotation as a freshman. And so now it's just his time to shine, I guess.
Continuing with the running back conversation, as we all know that Wisconsin is a power run football team. Top running back recruit Jordan Stevenson didn't report to summer camp with the rest of his 2015 classmates. Some say he could see some big playing time this season. Could he miss some time? And with missing time in camp, could that hurt his chances of getting on the field during the season?
It could, just because the Badgers have a couple other guys who are kind of in the pipeline, so to speak. The guys that are on campus already and have been for a while are Taiwan Deal and then Dare Ogunbowale, who were kind of battling back and forth to be the number 2 running back in spring camp. Just based on my personal observation, I thought Taiwan Deal came on really strongly at the end of camp after he had a couple of injuries during his freshman season that kind of prevented him from getting onto the field. But he's definitely more of a bruising style runner. But I wouldn't underestimate his speed. He can get up to top speed pretty quickly, and that certainly surprised me in watching him during practices. And then Ogunbowale is a converted defensive back who has shown some flashes. He had some pretty good carries for the Badgers during some garbage time in a few games last year, and then he had a really good performance during their spring game. So those two guys, and combined with Bradrick Shaw, I think is already on campus doing summer conditioning with the team and should be with the team for fall camp. With those three guys kind of in the mix there, it will be hard for Stevenson to kind of break into the rotation, but in watching his highlight films and things like that, he certainly has the talent where you can't rule it out right away.
We're on a line with Wisconsin Badger senior writer for BadgerBlitz.com, John Veldehuis. You can follow him on Twitter at John Veldehuis. That's Veldhuis. Next question, we're going to go on to Wisconsin has some senior signal callers who split time at QB last season. And it looks like they're heading into another quarterback battle this year. And they both had average somewhat average years, I would say. Between Stavy and McEvoy,